So, the end of the year is very quickly approaching us here in the education realm, here in the lovely state of Florida. And I feel that these thoughts that I'm going to share today are very much so things that I've needed to remind myself and to tell myself. So, I hope that if you are a teacher or if you have a friend who is a teacher, then share these thoughts along with them and see if it'll help because I know that they've definitely helped me. But before I share them, if you have not subscribed already to my channel, I would love for you to join me here. My videos focus on lifestyle and teaching and intertwining my faith throughout all of that. And so if you haven't subscribed yet, I would love for you to click that subscribe button and to follow along. So first things first, regarding classroom management. One of the biggest things that I have had to learn from a professional development that I took called the Unteachables Academy with Claire. I'll link her Instagram handle and her course below. It absolutely changed my life and changed my mindset when it comes to classroom management. But the first tip I have for you, if you're struggling with classroom management into May, into however until it is the end of the year, is to keep regulating yourself. So, what does regulating kind of mean? It means keeping yourself calm, keeping your emotions intact, making sure that you are not just reacting out of anger or out of frustration, but to regulate yourself to stay calm. What that looks like for me often is breathing in, breathing out. When you're feeling like you're getting stressed and you're kind of in your head about different things, to just breathe. Bringing in that oxygen just helps give more life into your brain as you try to navigate making the millions of decisions that you're trying to make throughout each and every class period, throughout every single school day. And we teachers face decision fatigue often, I feel. And so just breathing, regulating yourself as you go throughout class is a big classroom management tip. Second thing that I would strongly recommend with classroom management is to make efforts to try to co-regulate with your students. What I mean when I say and implore you to make efforts to co-regulate with your students is to get more curious about their behavior rather than to immediately get frustrated and rather than to immediately think that you're the worst teacher for not keeping them engaged or thinking that, oh, it's all on you that they're acting so crazy and you're not able to calm them down. It's a curiosity about why are they acting this way? Like, what is happening? Is their fight or flight triggered? Is something happening in the class that's triggering them and able to not help them to calm down? So sometimes what that co-regulation could look like, let's say that you are walking around the class, you're trying to teach, you're trying to get them to understand things. All of a sudden you see Johnny over here who has like head down, not engaged at all. Let's start with that kind of kid. Well, often what I like to try to do to try to know that I'm trying to keep this kid awake is to just kind of walk by, kind of crouch down a little bit, tap on the desk, pause the lesson really quick saying, hey, is everything okay? Like, are you okay? Are you feeling okay? Are you okay? Like kind of going with, are you okay? And instead of being like, oh, get up, it's start with that first, like let them know that you want to make sure they're okay before you go straight to, okay, you're just tired, like, hey, I get that, but I'm really gonna need you to get up for me and try to focus along because I don't want you to get behind. That's the kind of thing for, a kid who's maybe not engaged at all. When it comes to a kid like, say, Fred, who's over here, he's super rambunctious, he is clearly not calming down, he is like dancing to his headphones and doing all sorts of things. What I try to do is to put out those spot fires. So it's like, this kid is acting crazy, I like come over here and be like, hey, headphones away. I'm really gonna need you to focus in. Is there anything that you need from me? Like, I'm trying to get the class to work. Could you help me out and try to calm down, focus in? And sometimes it helps, it kind of brings it down. Other times, guys, for real, there's this one particular class that I shan't name who has been my most challenging class this year. And there are a lot of very rambunctious kids in this particular class. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way. But for me, for right now, I do start with that and try to stop the fires in that way. If that doesn't work with the kids who are like crazy rambunctious, I really have to end up going punitive them and saying like, hey, you're being disruptive to the class. I've talked to you. If you can't calm down, I'll have to write you up. And then from there, if the kid is still going crazy after you did write them up at that point, then sometimes you just gotta call the dean to get the kid out of the class because they cannot be there. And those rambunctious kids are not the only kids that you have in your class. And it's very unfair for the other kids to have to like constantly have to deal with that disruptive behavior that is disrupting their learning. So still trying to crack the code on that, but I do feel a lot better about this kind of method of really trying to just reach them individually and make sure that they don't need anything or figure out ways to calm them down, to do that first rather than immediately, hey, being disruptive, here's a write-up. And there's a reason why I've shifted over to this. So one reason why I've switched over to not being as punitive all the time is that I found that when I did that, often especially in the public school system, just going straight to punitive every single time without trying to like build a teacher-student relationship with them as far as knowing, like telling them my expectations, asking if they need anything, kind of building that relationship, not to be their friends, but to let them know, hey, I care about you as a person, I want to help you, but this behavior is not acceptable in this class. So I like shifting over to this kind of method. I don't even know exactly what to kind of call it, this kind of method, but I found that I have so much more peace about doing this kind of method rather than those immediate punitive measures. Because otherwise, and I tried this the way I was last year here at my school was that I did do the immediate punitive method, kind of the way that I was taught to in college. And some of my relationships with some of my students was really non-existent, which is super sad thinking back to it. But I didn't super know any other way, and I was just going based off of what I knew and what had worked previously with a certain demographic of students, but it just didn't work with some of the kids. And it made me really sad that I spent a whole year with some kids and I hardly had a relationship with them because they only knew me as someone who wanted absolute control, you could say, and would just give them referrals all the time. Whereas now, yes, I still have one class that can be absolutely crazy sometimes, which is sad to say, but it's the reality. But I feel like my relationships with many of those kids is leagues and bounds better than when I was just immediately punitive all the time last year. So another tip I have about classroom management at the end of the year is to hold as firmly to your boundaries as possible. So with classroom management, I can be such a victim to this, but it can be just super easy to be lax at the end of the year, and there is room for that in some way. But if you are going to keep your sanity at the end of the year, still have your procedures, still hold them to that bell ringer, still hold them to, hey, pause on the talking or stop talking, and then actually pausing and waiting after you give your expectation and catching those kids here and there who aren't following along. Hold to your classroom procedures as much as you can, because otherwise we're tired, they're tired, and there's going to be frustrations for all sorts of things. Because remember, yes, you might be tired, but the students still need to learn and they need to be able to have that education for their end of course test and their state tests and all those things. So just hold to your boundaries as much as you can. Now, not even boundaries in the classroom management, but also boundaries on your time. Now, at the end of the year, it always feels like this is that time of the year where there is constantly things to do, constantly things to get done, and they're all like top priority. But even hold to your boundaries about leaving school as much as you can. Now, you guys should have seen me a few days ago. I tried to film this video and my psyche was not having it at all. I was like, I need to get out of here. My boundaries are screaming at me. But today is Friday. It's a pretty relaxed rest of the day for me and my husband. And I figured if I'm talking about all this stuff, I should be in my class. But still, hold to your boundaries just as much as you can. My last tip for you guys is to give yourself and your students as much grace as possible. This might sound a little contradictory to the hold to your boundaries and then to give grace to yourself and to your students, but I truly believe they go hand in hand, because as you try to hold to your boundaries, you also need to remember that it is April, it is May. You're tired, the kids are tired. If that wonderful lesson you were planning to go from bell to bell is just not working out and you are actually exhausted, teach as much as you can, then assign students something else for the rest of class as a kind of work day. Maybe give them time to finish up any homework they have or makeup work for your class or for other classes. Like, don't forget to give yourself and your students that grace, because it is the end of the year and we're all so tired. Those are my tips, guys. Wow, it is the end of the year. It is absolutely crazy. And if any of those things were reminders to you, encouragements to you, please comment down below. And thank you so much for clicking and watching. If you have not subscribed yet, please go ahead and click that subscribe button as well as that like button. That would also be helpful. But thank you so much for watching and for your time, and I'll see you guys in the next video.